Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about some excerpt and some questions to Plato's The Republic. Some books define an era, others define all of human thought. Plato's The Republic is one of those rare works, a book that asks not just how we should live, but what it truly means to be good, wise and just. Written nearly 2,400 years ago, it remains one of the most influential works ever created, shaping philosophy, politics, psychology, and even education. In The Republic, Plato uses a series of conversations between his teacher Socrates and several citizens of Athens to explore the deepest questions about morality, truth, and society. The book begins with a simple question: what is justice? At first, the people Socrates speaks to give familiar answers. Some say justice means telling the truth and paying your debts. Others say it means helping your friends and harming your enemies. One man, Thrasymachus, goes even further. He argues that justice is simply the advantage of the stronger, the power to define right and wrong. But Socrates disagrees. Through questioning and reason, he shows that true justice cannot depend on power or opinion. It must be rooted in harmony, order and health of the soul. To explain this, Plato introduces one of the most famous metaphors in all of philosophy, the just city or Gallipolis. Socrates imagines building a perfect city from the ground up, not as a blueprint for real politics, but as a mirror for the human soul. He suggests that if we can understand what makes a city just, we can understand what makes a person just. In this city, there are three main classes: the producers, who provide goods and services, the guardians, who defend the city, and the rulers, philosopher kings, who govern with wisdom and reason. Each class has its own role, just as each part of the soul has its own function. The producers represent the appetites, desires and needs. The guardians represent spirit, courage and will, and the rulers represent reason, the mind that guides and balances all others. Justice, both in the city and in the soul, is achieved when each part performs its proper role in harmony with the rest. When reason rules, courage supports and desires obeys, the result is balanced in the state of justice. Plato's idea of justice is not about laws or punishment. It's about inner order. A just person is one whose soul is aligned, whose actions reflect truth and self-control. And this leads to one of Plato's most powerful messages. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. A just society begins with just individuals. But who should rule such a city? Plato's answers shocked many of his contemporaries. The philosophers argue that only those who love truth, seek wisdom and understand reality as it really is, can govern wisely. He writes that philosophers are not merely thinkers, they are lovers of knowledge, people who see beyond illusion. And this brings us to one of the most famous passages in all of philosophy, the allegory of the cave. Plato asks us to imagine a group of prisoners chained inside a dark cave from birth. They face a wall and can only see the shadows of objects cast by a fire behind them. These shadows are their entire reality. Then, one prisoner is freed. As he leaves the cave and steps into the sunlight, he is blinded at first, but as his eyes adjust, he sees the truth. That the shadow were only illusions, and that the real world exists beyond the cave. If he returns to tell the others, they might not believe him. They may even reject him. but he knows that what he saw outside the cave was real. The cave represents the human condition. The shadows are illusions, appearances, beliefs, and opinions shaped by ignorance or culture. The world outside represents truth, illuminated by the light of the good, the ultimate reality, the source of all knowledge and virtue. This allegory captures the journey of every thinker, seeker, or philosopher, the painful process of awakening from illusion to truth. The philosopher, Plato says, is like that freed person, one who escapes the cave of ignorance, sees the truth, and then returns to help others. But this is not easy. Many prefer the comfort of shadows to the brightness of truth. The allegory of the cave remains one of the most profound metaphors for enlightenment ever written. It reminds us that most people live in partial understanding, seeing only fragments of reality, and that true wisdom requires courage, humility, and vision. In the Republic, Plato explores education as process of turning the soul toward the light. He described it as the art of awakening. What already exists within, not filling the mind with facts, but helping it remember truth. He writes, "Education is not what some people declare it to be. Putting knowledge into soul that lack it is like putting sight into blind eyes. It is rather the art of turning the soul around." This idea that knowledge is not learned but remembered is rooted in Plato's belief in the forms or perfect ideals. For Plato, everything in the material world is an imperfect copy of a perfect ideal form of beauty. The form of justice, the form of goodness, eternal truths that exist beyond time and space. We perceive beauty in the world because we already have some inner sense of the perfect beauty itself. The philosopher's task, then, is to look beyond appearances and seek these internal forms. In this sense, philosophy becomes a kind of spiritual ascent. From illusion to reality, from opinion to knowledge, from shadow to light. Plato also tackles the question of virtue and happiness. He argues that the just life is the happiest life, not because it brings pleasure, but because it aligns the soul with the truth and harmony. Injustice, by contrast, creates chaos within the soul. It might be a short-term gain, but it leads to long-term sufferings. He writes, "The soul of the unjust man is full of disorder and ignorance, while the soul of a just man is in harmony and peace." To Plato, justice is not only moral, but therapeutic. It heals the soul just as balance heals the body. Plato's ideal society is hierarchical, yet deeply moral, yet it's ruled not by force, but by wisdom. The rulers, philosophers, kings, live simple, free from wealth and corruption, devoted to truth. The guardians protect, the producers sustain. Each class is essential, just as each part of the soul is essential. But the Republic is not just vision of government. It's a mirror for every human being. The city represents the soul, the rulers are your reason, the guardians your will, and the producers your desires. When reason governs, when will follows wisdom, desires follow truth, you become just, balanced, and free. Plato concludes that the ultimate goal of life is to contemplate the good, the highest reality, the source of truth, justice, and beauty. To know the good is to know life's purpose, to see clearly and to act rightly, and to live in harmony with the universe. The Republic ends not with law and politics, but with myth, The myth of A warrior named dies in battle, comes back to life telling what he saw in the afterlife. Souls are judged according to their deeds, the just rewarded and the unjust punished. Then each soul chooses its next life. Some chooses unwisely and fall again into misery. Others choose wisely and rise to a higher state. The message is timeless. Our choice shapes our souls. Justice is not merely for this world, it's for eternity. The takeaway from the Republic is this: justice is harmony within the soul, within society, and within the universe. When we align ourselves with truth and goodness, we find peace, clarity, and purpose. That was the Republic broken down into its most powerful lessons. Which idea spoke most to you? The allegory of the cave, the philosopher king, the vision of inner justice, or the parable of Thank you very much for listening.